I was spending a little bit of time with her trying to understand her journey. And the one thing that resulted in was that the introduction that I had prepared on this sheet of paper completely changed. You know, I came to know things that are not published on the internet. Those are not available on the public domain. So I'm going to take that liberty to share those things with the audience here, so that we can set the context of you as a human being, besides being an entrepreneur. So Shom is a first generation entrepreneur. She comes from a family which is of doctors. Nobody in our family had ever thought of doing business or become an entrepreneur. So Shom became an entrepreneur at the age of 16.
That's right.
Yeah, 16 was the first time when she started building a business. I mean, it was not an organized business as we see today, but that was the first time she tasted entrepreneurship while she was making chocolates for the people around her, And at the age of 23 was her first formal entrepreneurial venture that she started. And by the time she was 26, she had not only had a successful business that she was doing, she had turned into an angel investor. Something that not many people know is that she was someone who was born with a brain tumor.
That's right. Literally.
She was born with a brain tumor. First 4 years of her existence were on a wheelchair. And today we have with us sitting here someone who not only just overcame that, but also changed the way she lives. She is impacting so many lives around her. So congratulations to you. Sure. It's such a privilege to have somebody so inspirational to be with us, and also has changed my set of questions that I'm going to ask her. While we're discussing unicorns, we're talking about entrepreneurship. I want to understand, how did your entrepreneurial journey begin? What were the things that moved inside your head and in your heart that pushed you or triggered you to take on an entrepreneurial journey?
Thank you so much. Firstly, very, very good afternoon to all of you. It's an absolute honor to be sitting here with you today. And I think when we just started speaking, there was an amazing energy exchange and connection, right? It's very hard to do a session just after lunch. So there's this, I think, to stir everyone up, I think this is the journey of an entrepreneur. And for me, it started very early, and I'll tell you guys why. যদি তোর ডাক শুনে কেউ না আসে তবে একলা চলো রে একলা চলো একলা চলো একলা চলো একলা চলো রে যদি তোর ডাক শুনে কেউ না আসে তবে একলা চলো রে. When you're born with a brain tumor and the first news that is delivered to your parents is that she may not be able to survive, I think that's when your journey of being Akla starts. And Akla in Bengali means alone. But the truth of this song is not that you have to walk alone. The truth of this song is that you're always in a constant battle with yourself. You proving your worth is to not the external world, it's to yourself. So when my parents took the decision to get the surgery done, despite the doctors saying that I'll lose all my motor functions, they took a risk. And I tell this to my father, that you already had taken that risk when I was born, is why I never have become risk averse, right? I'm always taking a risk in life, which is super important. That's what the song is about. Take a risk in life. If you win, you lead. If you fail, you guide. So my journey, with the adversities started as I went through with my life, the first few years of my life on a wheelchair, 7 surgeries to get my motor functions back. I think I'd already made up my mind I don't want to be a doctor. I'd spent too much time in the hospitals to realize that that's not a profession I want to take. But what changed the thought process even more is that I used to go with my father very often to Calcutta Club. I was born in a Bengali family, Bengali middle class family. We used to go to Calcutta Club. And all my dad's friends were the likes of the Billas and the Tatas because they used to be the ones who used to come to Calcutta Club. You know, Bengal was the bastion for business. And they used to come in this fancy Mercedes Benz and we used to go in a humble, ambassador. And I used to ask my, dad that, why don't we come in these fancy cars? And he used to say, those are for business people. And I told him, then that's what I want to be one day. Irony of life, I never invested in any fancy cars because once you earn the money, you realize the cost of depreciation can actually impact your investment. So I never ended up owning a fancy car. However, that was my first motivation. It changed as I grew up, right? When I came to Bangalore, I came here for the purpose of studying, but given that I was hustling, I wanted to have something on the side. So somebody in the Pengas that I lived in taught me how to make chocolates. And I saw this as an opportunity. Going to college, I saw my friends had the luxury of having boyfriends and I didn't. So I'm like, you know what? They have boyfriends. How about I sell these chocolates to them? So I had to go to Jayanagar, buy this wrapping paper, which is like, a place in Bangalore, and actually sell it at my college. What started with about 500, 600 bucks a month became a thriving 20,000, 30,000 a month income by the end of my first year. What it taught me is that at the end of the day, the hustle is a constant in an entrepreneur's life. Entrepreneurship is a very, very fancy word. The word is dhanda. If you want to do business, you need to have consumers. And if the consumers are ready to invest in you, then you're never going out of business. That's how my journey started.
Awesome. So, Shom, we keep hearing that every entrepreneur or every human being has a metric of success that they create in their mind.
Right.
And that is the day when they say that, now achieve this, now I can call myself successful.
Right.
What is the meaning of success to you? And has it changed from the first time you experienced success to what you call success today for yourself?
Absolutely. I think that's a phenomenal question. First thing, success is not money or recognition. Because if you're chasing either of that, you'll end up in depression. And that's the reality. You're constantly trying to prove a point to someone. Constantly. And the reason I started with the song Akla Cholo is because the proving is not to anybody external. It is more internal. If it is internal, then you'll be actually happy with what you're doing. But the question you asked, and I'm going to answer that specifically. When I was young, the success metric was the fancy car. When I was 16, the success metric was how much money I earned. Could I sustain myself with that? Today, the metric is how many people's life have I touched? And I was showing you, a message from one of my team members. We hire people, and sometimes the dream that they come in the organization is not the title. It is, can I buy my first house being in this company? Can I get my first car? Can I do the first few things I have aspired to do? Because that to them is the metrics of their success. Over time, what I have realized, because I became a millionaire when I was just 26 years old, I made a lot of money. And then I started angel investing. And I started my second company after that, which I didn't need to. If the metric was money, then I had already made the money. In a middle-class family, that's a lot of money, right? But that was not the metric of success. The metric of success was how many people are going to remember me, even if I am gone. People do not remember people with money. And I can ask this to any one of you seated here today. Tell me 10 companies that were called unicorns 5 years back that you remember now. 70% of them don't exist. All the so-called extremely flamboyant entrepreneurs 10 years back don't even come on stage today. I started 15 years back and I still come and speak. It's not because people remember me, it's because I still am hustling every day. I have not stopped being an entrepreneur because I made money. I've not stopped being an entrepreneur because I had 2 successful exits, or I've become an angel investor. I do this because I want to leave my legacy with how many people's life I have touched. How many people feel inspired by hearing my story? Because the truth is, we all are born extraordinary. Some of us just choose to be ordinary. It is a mindset. It's not that we are all ordinary and we choose to be extraordinary. If you ask me, each one of us are born with the same kind of talent, 100%. Because when you were born, nobody came with a formula said, you can walk at this rate if you multiplied by X into 5 into 7. No, we all walked at the rate we could. We all fell a couple of times before we took our first step. That mindset changes with environment, with friendships. We get carried away with benchmarking, but we forget that the benchmarking is with us. Nobody else comes to feed us, right? And then nobody else comes to take care of us. When you are in pain, nobody comes to ease that pain. So Swami Vivekananda is way more successful than any entrepreneur in the world because his legacy is going to live for 1,000 years after he's gone. If an entrepreneur can do that, then that's the biggest truth of success.
Absolutely. I can't agree with you more on this. And we were talking, and I firmly believe that if you are known by your designations, if you're known by your organization, the brand, you will be remembered till the time you are alive. But if you are someone who's touching people's lives, if you are someone who is remembered for the way you make people feel, you will be remembered till the time the people are alive. So I think that's a very powerful thing. And that's a big takeaway from, what you were saying.
Yeah.
Now, Shom, we always hear founders coming and talking about their success.
Right.
They talk about what helped them succeed.
Mm-hmm.
I'm yet to come across anyone that I have met who's not experienced a setback in their life.
Oh, yes.
And the most powerful learnings come from when people experience a setback. Yeah. I choose to call failures a setback because one thing common that I've seen is that every entrepreneur who succeeded today, they did not stop when they experienced a setback. They learned from it, moved ahead.
Absolutely.
What has been your learning and what have been the setbacks or failures you have experienced as an entrepreneur?
Absolutely. I think, firstly, the term fail stands for first attempt in learning, right? And that first attempt in learning will continue till the last day you die, right? So that is the first essence of life. And it's got nothing to do with entrepreneurship. It is to do with every aspect of life. It happens in personal life, relationships, profession, and it keeps going on. As an entrepreneur, the first thing, I experienced when I used to make those chocolates and tried to sell at my college, the first thing I learned was negotiation. For you to convince someone of the value of that chocolate, that is not just made at home, wrapped in cellophane paper and you're trying to sell, but the value, the emotional quotient of the chocolate is, when you give it to someone that you love, you feel good about it. And that is something you need to keep doing at every aspect of your life. I remember when I first took the first set of chocolates and sell it at my college, nobody bought it. I would get it back home and I would be really sad. I'm like, what is going on? What is that I'm doing that is not working? And that is what made me realize is that I was pushing too hard. I was trying to convince them of the value. That should not be the case. If you have a great product, then it will automatically communicate its value, right? You just need to know how to tell the story well. As I grew up and I started my first company, which was an ad tech company, we used to sell to B2B customers. The hardest thing for you to convince the customer is that you're a small company. How are you going to deliver the value that you're committing to deliver? Fast forward a few years, that company got acquired. You are talking to investors, right? And you're starting to raise money, let's say for your second company. The second thing that you have to encounter is, oh my God, you're a woman entrepreneur. You don't have a co-founder. And we women, I think a lot of us sitting here today can concur with that. Sad state of affairs that out of 100%, the 2% of women actually get funded. And that's the reality. So women entrepreneurs have to work equal hard to prove our point because we are often compared to our male counterparts, even though the top banks of the world are run by women and the best chefs of the world are men, which means men are naturally good in kitchen and women are naturally good with money. Yet we have to convince harder. So that struggle, and all the men clapping know that if you are losing money from your wallet, is because the wife is saving for the rainy day. They know how to save money. They're good with that. We are good with money. Out of the 2% that get funded, 79% are profitable. What does it talk about? Our capabilities. But because you talked about entrepreneurship and specifically the struggle, even after 2 successful exits, I still have to convince people why we are better. And I run a highly profitable company. Indeed, we are the top 5 accelerators in the world. Born in India, going global. Like, Assiduus today, just as of yesterday, we were like, Deloitte just finished our financial due diligence and we've done over 186 million in GMV and almost double-digit profit. And we're declaring it and we're paying taxes for it. Yet you get compared. So the constant drive of failure is being able to accept that rejection is a part of acceptance, right? Unless you get rejected a couple of times, there's no fun in acceptance. What you as an entrepreneur have to do is, if you believe in that, if you are true to what you're doing and you hire people who are better than you, you know you're building something that's going to be sustainable, scalable, irrespective of any adversity that comes its way. One of the challenges, and you and I were talking about with entrepreneurship, is we get so attached to what we build and we believe we only do so well that we become blind to everything external. And if we hire people who are better than us, that is the true merit and success of an entrepreneur. You actually then reduce your chances to fail or make those mistakes that you keep doing. So that's my little bit of summation.
Right. You know, I'm going to take it on from there. Since you say that you hire the best of people and then, if I understand correctly, empower them to do their job well.
Absolutely.
Right? But one thing that I've seen differentiates the founder from the employed professionals is the passion.
Yeah.
You know, the passion with which you start your business that fuels your dreams, that may not be the case with an employed person, right? Now, how does a founder, or how have you overcome this so that you don't get frustrated just because someone else who's good in his job does not share the same passion as you do?
You know, that's a phenomenal question. And I think every founder's life should be a balance of passion and prudence. If you're over passionate, then you lose sight of what is practical. And why do I highlight this? Is when you're hiring people, first thing you have to accept is that they are not your fellow entrepreneurs. Expecting them to behave like one is a big mistake. So expectation setting is a very paramount importance in an entrepreneur's life, right? Either you hire people to be co-founders, that means they are in the same skill set and mind process, a thought process like you, so you know they can accelerate at that stage. Or if you're hiring employees, then have that expectation, right? That expectation mismatch is what leads to frustration. The second thing I think that happens is compromising. Like, you know, and what I mean by compromising is that as an entrepreneur, we feel that because we have started this business, we know it all. That's the biggest failure for us. I was taught this when I was doing my PhD. I remember one of my professors had asked me to make notes of things that I'm not good at. And I found it so hard to make that note. I was young and I was like, well, I must be very good at everything. I'm doing my research, means I'm smart as hell, right? He tore that paper down a couple of times till I actually wrote down my real weaknesses. And he said, this is the starting point of your success. Acceptance, acknowledgement, and understanding. If you hire people who are yes, sir, or yes, ma'am, the company is bound to fail. I hire people who can debate with me, and our attrition rate is less than 1%. And you know why? Because they come knowing that their thoughts, their values, their challenge, or whatever their thought processes are going to be valued in the organization. We hire people from small town and hire people with stories because they're hungry. Don't get me wrong, with all due respect to the great Ivy League schools and, you know, IITs, IIMs, we don't hire people from there. I can't afford them. One. Second thing, I rather hire people who are hungry and who are going to stay true to what we are doing. The other expectation mismatch happens is when people come with the mindset, I have come from this organization of this college, this institution, therefore I deserve this pay, this equity and all. Have you done anything to deserve it? But you don't want to debate that. So what happens is you knowing the kind of people you want in your organization also creates that foundation. One, if you're hiring an employee, remember that they're not an entrepreneur. Two, do not compromise in the value that you provide them. Ensure that they feel valued in the organization, both in terms of remuneration, equity, growth, whatever it takes to keep them motivated. If you get a good talent, it is up to you as an entrepreneur to know how to keep them in the organization. The third thing is, don't go by what degree they have. Being educated and literate are not the same thing. That is my biggest learning as an entrepreneur. Degrees do not make you educated. Education comes from values. So when we hire people, We have processes in place to actually ask them questions to assess their values, how they treat people around them, their relations with their family. These things are important to us because those virtues are what they carry forward in the organization. That's the culture. The culture is the biggest ethos, what keeps people together. That is the reason people stay true. That is how companies are built. Today, if I leave Assiduus, I can tell you the company will continue to survive because the value and the culture is so strong. That is my legacy.
Awesome. I think I totally agree with you that culture defines the organization as its longevity. You spoke about processes.
Right.
And, when an entrepreneur starts his venture, it's typically stemming out of a personal need, a purpose, there's a passion which is there, and they are experimenting, they're naive, they're okay to make mistakes, but they're small, right? When you're small, the mistakes that you make are not the expensive ones.
Yep.
And then the business grows, you have an investor who comes in, you have a shareholder pattern that has to be maintained. Yep. And that is where systems and processes that come in, because there has to be some level of consciousness in which you run your business. Yep. Because you have these Excel sheets, you have a responsibility towards your employees, towards yep. your shareholders. Do you think that this journey towards process-oriented way of working takes away that fire, that originality with which you were working in the first place? And does that become boring for a founder?
That's a phenomenal question. So I'll answer it in two parts. The first is, our process is important for a long-term scaling, growing business. Absolutely, yes. You cannot work on just Excels like the way you started, or out of a PowerPoint presentation like the way you start, right? It doesn't work like that. You have to have processes, because at the end of the day, as long as you do not set that level of automation, there is no way you can scale, right? That is required. Is it required only when VCs come in? No, it is required because you're growing the organization, because you don't want it to be an individual or individuals dependent. It should be a process and an automation dependent, so that something goes wrong, you are not there. The key people step down, the company continues to run. That accountability is to your customers. They are the reason you build a company. If you have founded a company, it is because you're selling a value to somebody at the end. That is your consumer or your customer. If they are not protected, then what is the purpose of your company? Shareholders, venture capitalists, all are absolute, like, negligible, compositions in this, unless you have a customer. They're not even going to fund you because somebody is paying for the value. That is your end customer. So to protect them, you need processes. Do entrepreneurs get bored? 100%. I decided after my first venture that I'm going to take a break, and I got into angel investing. I even, Harbinder, I've done a lot of things, which is for the first time, like I stood in for an election in NASCOM, became the young and the first woman to become a vice chair of the product council. And I campaigned for myself. And I never even came from a Microsoft or an IBM or anything. Indeed, I was the first ever entrepreneur sitting amongst a council member where all were above 40 and only 2 women were there. I remember Ankita, who runs Saha Fund, and me, and I was elected vice chair. But I got bored. I got bored because it was not exciting after some time. That fire in the belly is the ability to create. And I think it's for women a little more. It's called the power of 2 X chromosomes. And I say it's not the men who need empowerment. It's not the women who need empowerment. It's the men who do. They don't even know how to give life. So who needs empowerment? Them or us? A woman is not to woo a man. A woman is a womb plus a man. So we get bored more easily. And that's why if you see, even if you talk to your wife or your children, you'll see that women are constantly looking for something new to do. So yes, we do. So I wrote a book. I became the first woman to get elected in Dr. Philip Kotler's Kotler Impact Chair, and I was a part of the board. And I wrote a book with him, became a bestseller. I got bored again, started my second company, started doing extremely well, made money. Then I wanted to take my company cross-border. That's when my seat for the third company came, because I was already getting bored. But I realized, this is me. What is one of those shortcomings that I had written down when I was writing my first paper to my professor was that I like to be detached. I know when I want to exit. Super important as an entrepreneur to know. you need to know your exit strategy, whether it is through an IPO or through an acquisition. You cannot stay attached to that one dream that you started with for the rest of your life. It is not a modus operandi. It's not survival. It's a fallacy that doesn't exist, right? So yes, we get bored, but being bored does not mean you have to stop the processes, because then that means the failure of the organization. That is like knowing death, like you did a suicide. You don't want to do that. So the way you ensure that you keep yourself excited about things, build those processes, plan your exit, let the next league of people take over so you can watch back and see what a legendary organization you have built. You know, even a Thomas Edison had to step down someday. Even a Nikola Tesla, no matter out of the 800 patents he owned, even he had to sell his patents someday. So it's very important to know when to let go, when to leave. We do get bored. I think humans do get bored. That's why do you think people switch jobs? Because they get bored, right? It happens in entrepreneurs even more. But knowing your exit strategy, knowing when to let go is the biggest asset of an entrepreneur.
You know, to all the men here, we know that entrepreneurship, for a successful entrepreneur, you know, you have to be driven by newness, right? So if you're a wannabe entrepreneur, please start looking for a woman co-founder.
Oh yes, 100%. You need someone to save the money, yeah.
And also, you know, there's something, you know, good about being bored, because if you get bored, that is the time when you start looking at what next. You know,
even within the organization,
exactly.
Even pivoting, adding new layers.
So bringing newness to the organization just keeps the excitement level on, not only just internally within the organization, but also for your customer base who's expecting something new from you.
Absolutely.
You know, so Shom, as and when businesses grow, the founder is putting systems in place, the business is growing, he starts making more money, he starts having more of customers, he starts having more of employees, and the only thing that goes down is the time available to him. True, right? So when the time is less available to the entrepreneur, which means he's going to start spending less time with his friends, family, or people around them, do you think that they are seen as arrogant, or is it true that they get arrogant? Mm-hmm. And have you ever experienced that in your journey?
Oh, yes.
And if you did, what is it that you did about it?
Absolutely. I think first things, you brought up something so pertinent, and it's so important for young entrepreneurs to keep that in mind. And like, you know, given that I've been 3 times over, I've experienced it and gone through it. You get more busy than anybody else in life, including your parents start feeling that, right? Means it has happened when I was starting my first venture, because I had the urge to prove and do things quickly. And that's what happens when you're young, you are so desperate to make that mark and you want to prove your point that you hustle extra hard. And I remember from talking to my mom and dad every day, it had become once a week, and I could feel their pain. Was I arrogant? No. Was I too absorbed? Yes. As I went to the second venture, things changed a little bit, because now I knew what gaps I needed to build or bridge in advance. I started building a very solid team in the beginning itself, putting processes in place. So I found more time. You know, I was sharing with you, I'm a trained Hindustani classical singer. I stopped practice because I got so busy with it. Then I love playing golf. I used to do, like, you know, play at amateur level at a handicap of 10. I stopped playing that because of, you know, what came in the way. Friends, 100%. But friends, sometimes you have to understand that if you have to prove to your friends that spending time with them is a definition of friendship, then let go of such friends. I have friends I meet once in 4 years, but they're still my best friends. Because evolution is the only constant in life. Nothing is permanent. You will lose people in the way. You will have to let go of people in the way. What is very important is this journey coming in the way of your own personal development? And because we are talking so openly, I have battled depression. And I battled that depression because my first company could have become a much bigger organization if I didn't raise money early, or I didn't do the mistakes I did. And that time there was nobody there to guide me. So I fell into depression and I started questioning myself. Even though I made money, why did it happen like the way it happened? I could have done so much more, because then I was seeing others who were excelling at an X rate or whatever, right? But I took a step back. That's when you realize how important family is. It was my parents that were there by my side. They kind of started spending more time with me. I went back doing things that made me happy. Took up piano, started learning a new language, got fluent in Spanish, started traveling. And I realized how important it is to balance your left and right brain. Because remember something, it's very important to understand. The reason industrial revolutions started taking place, man started innovating, because they want to find more time for leisure to nurture the right brain. It is the right that makes your survival, thrival, everything in place. Left is just for execution. So when you focus too much on the left and you stop focusing on the creative side, that is when mental health issues start coming into the picture. And what happened with me was that because I stopped being true to myself, what made me happy, I fell into a trap. But today, a couple of years down the line, it has been 10 years since then, I'm the happiest person because I find time for myself. I have such a great team. I have such a great venture which runs on an amazing team and process. I do find time for myself. I do find time for my relationship. I do find time for my family because I found that balance. Is this still fully balanced? No. That term balance doesn't exist. But is it better than before? 100% yes. Did I become arrogant? I wouldn't say I became arrogant, but I became too aggressive in a way that I forgot the fine line between assertiveness and aggressiveness. Assertiveness is staying true to what you want to do by being around the right people to execute it. Aggressive is trying to do everything yourself, which is nothing but a motive to fail. It's just like saying, I'm going to go jump on my own. So I think that's been my learning curve.
I think it's brilliant because, I see a lot of people reacting rather than responding.
Oh, yes.
And, I think the sanity comes in with having the right people around you.
Yes.
So that you feel comfortable that you are in the right company, you are in the right hands.
Yeah.
Because, there are a lot of insecurities that as a founder also you have.
Yeah.
And sometimes you can't speak of these, openly because it's going to create fear in the minds of the people who are working with you. Shoma, I'm going to come to the next question because something very interesting you told me while we were sitting there and we were, I was trying to, we were having a conversation.
Yeah.
You said that value creation is more important than valuation.
100%.
We are in a summit where we're discussing unicorns.
Yes.
And unicorns is all about valuation.
Oh, yes.
Can you share your perspective on this?
With all due respect to Businessworld, the word unicorn actually is nothing but a fallacy, right? It doesn't exist in the real world, is why it's called a unicorn. I think 2022 has been a reality check by showing that the truth of a company lies in actual value creation, which means customers paying for your business and you being profitable. Because if you're taking somebody else's money and burning it just on papers to look good, that is not sustainable. Is why some of the so-called unicorns today have not only gone kaput, are finding it very hard to raise money. And we have done millions of dollars of revenue. We're just raising only $2 million. Why? Because we still wanted to be a company driven by value creation, which is our clients paying for it. Because imagine from a Cipla to a Unilever to a Marico to a Reckitt Benckiser, we count all of them as clients. And we have not lost a single client in 3.5 years of our business operations, not one. 100% retention of clients. Because we actually believe in value creation. We're adding value to them. So every time we are getting more and more business from our existing clients, that is funding the company. Why do you need to go and raise external capital? Value creation also means understanding the problem that you're solving for the client has to have a real life value to them. So you become irreplaceable. If they can do it themselves, they will quickly migrate. So how do you ensure that they stay true to you is by constantly adding value to their business so that they go in numbers without their bottom line getting impacted. If they stay profitable, they will never leave you. But if your work towards them or your value towards them is depreciating that for them, then they will never be with you. So what 2022 has done is given a reality check. And if I don't know how many of you have watched the video by Rakesh Chunjunwala, he said, I'm happy for the Zomatos and Paytms, but I'll never buy their shares. I'll buy shares of only company that declares profit. I will buy because that's what matters at the end of the day. Finally, Uber now has declared profit just 6 months back, right? Or the ones that is not, like you guys have seen what happened with the Twitter deal. It has fallen through because half of the users are bots. You can create a fallacy only for some time. The world will see through it. So I think what we as entrepreneurs should focus on is not a validation by a VC. It's great to have it. We have amazing VCs on our cap table. Indeed, 9 Unicorn, which is also a venture capitalist, is one of our investors. But the most important thing to keep in mind is that is not the validation of your business. Do you have real customers? Will they pay for it? Will they continue to pay for it? Will they stick with you? Do you have a competitor advantage of something that you've built that the competitor is going to take 3-4 years to catch up? That is value creation. That is what's going to make your company really, really strong. And you'll be flocked by people that will want to invest in. And why do you want to give away the ability to run the company to someone else or let somebody else dictate the company? If you can run the company on your own, build your legacy and have the customers fund it. There's no better business. When the Birlas, Tatas built like that. Indeed, Tata was my icon all my life because all they did was they found one problem. Salt se leke sabun tak sab bechte hai yaar, because they know that consumer that buys salt will also buy sabun. That is real dhanda. That is the merit of a true business. And that's what I believe in.
So, Shom, I do something called 200 Coffees, and I speak to a lot of people who've been a part of my journey. And some of these are entrepreneurs. Many of them have raised, they're publicly listed companies. And I was talking to one of the entrepreneurs, and I will not take the name. He says, यार business तो शुरू किया था, बड़ा मजा आ रहा था. उसके बाद अब जब ये IPO हो गया, ये सब कर लिया, अब तो मैं सिर्फ shareholder, investor manager. So do you think that the founder who has started the business loses, again, I'm coming back to the old question.
True.
Do you think he loses that fire in him because he is involved in that were not his first choice?
Yeah.
Or do you think, stemming from what you just said, do you think the investor actually brings in sanity because he makes you think कि पैसा कैसे कमाओगे, customer कहाँ से लेके आओगे, धंधे को sustain कैसे करना है, forget about grow करना है, sustain कैसे करना है? So how do you balance as a founder between these two dichotomies?
Brilliant question. So you asked me 2 parts and I'm going to answer that. The first is, where did my investors come from? Did it come at the beginning of the journey of the company where I needed to raise money? Because sometimes in deep tech companies, you need to raise money. You need that money to be able to create the product, right? Or did it come when I went IPO, right? In many cases, if you see in the old school Tatas of the world, they didn't have any VCs. They raised debt, they built business, they went IPO, shareholders paid for it. As a founder, if you founded the company, you have a choice. Do you still want to be the CEO? If you are the CEO, then you have to be answerable for all this because you have to manage the business at all levels. You need to know finance, you need to know operations, you need to know human resource, you need to know all of that. Or do you just want to be a founder and chairman? Like, it's a question that you ask as a founder, do I need to wear both the hats? Or am I open to stepping down and letting somebody else take it? It kills the fire, 100% is done. If you ask me, do I enjoy sitting with my CFO and discussing finance all the time? Hell no. I now know all the possible returns on GST and VAT and different licensing at the back of my hand, which I didn't know about. I had to learn because this is my business. Do I love it? No ways. That's why I got a CFO, right? But do I have to know it? Yes. Till the time I decide to continue to be the CEO, I have to. Do I go enjoy sitting in the warehouse, looking at all the packaging details, racking, etc., etc.? I had to learn it. Because if I want to run the operations and want to talk to my CEO, I need to know all of this. Whether if you raise money early and you have VCs, you have to be answerable. Do they understand your business? 100% no. Sometimes they understand what it takes to grow their business because they're also looking at an exit. They're also looking at how they're going to monetize. See, anybody who puts in money in the organization always is looking for how do you monetize. The reason I think they call the angels is because we take the most amount of risk Our chances of getting an exit is the least sometimes, but that's the fun of being an angel. Either you take that risk early, you make that money, or you don't make at all. But everybody has to get their liquidity out, right? So whether it's a shareholder like you and me that buy a share, or it's a VC that takes the risk of investing money of the LPs and trying to get an exit, it is going to be there. Accountability has to be there. You cannot take out accountability. Whether you are the CEO or whether you don't want to be the CEO, it's a question the founder has to take. I think it is upon the founder. When you feel you don't have it in you anymore, step down. But don't come in the way of the success of the company that can become your legacy.
Got it. How many of you are wannabe entrepreneurs? You are about to start your business or wish to start your business, or are at a point where you're raising your first round or angel round or seed fund? Anyone out here? Okay. My one question to you is that when an entrepreneur wants to go and raise capital, he wishes to keep some amount of money that he makes every month as a salary for himself. True. And I'm asking you because you play a role as an angel investor as well. Now, I've seen in India, a lot of these investors say that, boss, you need to have your skin in the game. Yeah. You should not be taking salary.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. Yeah.
Right. But the Silicon Valley has a different view, which says that, unless you've got your house covered, the basic, the food on the plate covered, how will you be able to focus on your work? Right. What is your view?
That's why we're so ahead of us in many ways, right? One, agar पेट खाली है, तो बंदा काम कैसे करेगा? This is not charity. First thing about entrepreneurship is you're not doing charity. You're building business because you want to make money. And that means protecting yourself first. So skin in the game means I'm taking the risk of building something so visionary that I'm not following somebody's footstep and taking the risk of doing it so that I can contribute to the economy. That is the biggest risk you're taking. That does not mean that I'm not going to take a salary, not going to feed myself, not going to have a house, live a life of a saint. Then I'll become a saint, right? Why should I be an entrepreneur? So first thing is you're doing it for money. You're not doing charity. If your angels and VCs says you shouldn't do it, then they are not your right angels and VCs. You shouldn't be taking money from them, right? That is not sustainable. That is not scalable. And if they're saying that, they are not the right people for you. I think India has changed a lot. I don't think angels and VCs say that anymore. They indeed want you to protect yourself. But yeah, we're nowhere in the league of what a Silicon Valley does. We have a long way to go. But still, we have improved significantly where we do understand that if the entrepreneur is not covered, if their basics, their needs are not covered, they cannot perform well. Because you mentally have to be okay as well. Physical mental well-being are paramount importance for your performance. And if you're not good there, if you're not happy there, you will never be able to build a company. So we never say that. No ways. Indeed, we take a bet on the person, right? So indeed, there are times I've taken a bet on someone who's like, has no money, but I know the potential of the person is immense. And we have got other people together to kind of help and support and, ensure that they build it out. And I've also got an exit from that. So sometimes you're always betting on the jockey, always, never the horse. You're betting on the people. And if people are not well taken care of, they'll never perform. No matter how good the horse is. If jockey is not good, you'll never win the race.
That's a brilliant, perspective that you shared. Thank you so much, Shom. I really, really enjoyed this conversation.
My pleasure.
And if you guys enjoyed listening to Shom and her experience, please show it by a round of applause.
Thank you so much.